All right, let's just dive right in and talk about adulting. For anyone who's striking out on their own for the very first time, it can feel like you've been handed this massive rule book, and it's all written in a language you don't understand. But what if I told you it's way, way simpler than that? Today, we're going to break down the logic of living alone into a few clear, totally simple milestones.
I know. Reading that, you're probably thinking, easy? No way. It sounds like a pretty bold claim, right? But this is the core idea from our source material, and trust me, it's the foundation for everything we're about to cover. The point isn't to pretend there are no challenges, but to completely reframe how we look at them. And that is the absolute key. This isn't about having some secret adulting gene that you either have or you don't. It's all about building simple, repeatable systems that do all the heavy lifting for you. Once you see it that way, the whole picture just shifts from this overwhelming mess to something you can totally manage. Okay, let's get into it. Here's the game plan for today. We're going to walk through 4 big milestones. First, finding your own space. Second, setting up a kitchen that actually works for you. Third, taming the chore monster once and for all. And finally, we'll tie it all together with the simple logic behind it all.
First up, the big one, finding your very first apartment. This can feel like the most intimidating part of the whole process, but we're not going to look at it as one giant leap. Instead, we're going to see it for what it is, a straightforward 4-step process. So you see the logic here, right? It's all about the flow. You start with the most important thing, what you can actually afford. That's your anchor. Then, and only then, do you start the search. Then you inspect and ask a ton of questions, and only after you have all that information do you even think about reviewing the lease and signing. See? Each step builds on the last. It stops you from getting overwhelmed or, making a bad decision.
Okay, and this slide is where the rubber really meets the road. Anybody can walk into a room and see if it's big or small, but have you ever actually thought to check the water pressure in the shower? Or pull out your phone in the bedroom and see if you even have a signal? These little practical questions, they are your superpower when you're viewing a place.
All right, let's move on. So you've got the keys, you've moved in, now you have to actually live in this space. We're going to start with the heart of the home, the kitchen. And we're going to use this brilliant little concept called containerizing to turn all that potential chaos into calm, cool efficiency.
And this just lays it out so clearly, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the kitchen with the doom drawer, where finding a can opener is a 5-minute treasure hunt. It's pure stress. On the right, you have a system. Everything has a designated home. And this isn't about being a neat freak. It's about saving yourself time and sanity every single day.
So how do you get to that calm, efficient kitchen? It's this simple, a 3-step process. First, just pull everything out and group similar things together. All your baking stuff goes in one pile, all the spices in another. Step 2, give each of those groups a home, a specific drawer, a shelf, maybe a bin. And step 3, the game changer, label it. Now your brain doesn't have to remember where everything is, it just has to read. Simple. And this is so important to remember. The goal is not to have a picture-perfect, Instagram-worthy pantry with 100 matching glass jars, unless that's your thing, of course. The real goal is just to build a system that lets you find the paprika without having to dig through a mountain of stuff. It's all about function over form, and what makes sense to your brain. All right, let's tackle the never-ending story. Chores. Instead of seeing them as this giant mountain you have to climb every single weekend, we're going to reframe them as a low-stress routine. A system you can basically set and forget. Just take a look at this example. This isn't about some crazy 8-hour cleaning marathon on a Saturday. No way. It's about spreading the workout. A quick 15-minute tidy on Monday, a kitchen reset midweek. When you break it down into these tiny, manageable chunks, no single task ever feels that big. You're just maintaining. You're not constantly trying to recover from a huge mess. And that brings us to this one kind of magical number, 15. That's it, 15 minutes. Seriously, can you find 15 minutes somewhere in your day? Of course you can. You just set a timer, put on a couple of songs, and tidy up. It's that one little habit that's more powerful than any weekend cleaning binge, because it stops the clutter from ever taking over. Okay, so we've found an apartment, we've organized the kitchen, we've even managed to tame the chore monster. Now, let's zoom all the way out and look at the beautiful, simple philosophy that connects every single one of these milestones. This is what we call the logic of living.
And this is the question that just ties it all together. Finding an apartment, setting up a kitchen, managing chores, they all seem like totally different skills, but they're not. They're all just different expressions of the exact same core idea. So what is that idea?
And there it is, practical logic. It's the philosophy of looking at a huge, intimidating goal, like, say, living on my own, and refusing to see it as one big monster. Instead, you break it down into a checklist of small steps and simple systems. That's it. That's the whole secret. So if you walk away with anything from our time together, let it be these 4 ideas. First, adulting is about systems, not some secret skill. Second, break those big goals down into small, easy steps. Third, containerize the chaos. Give everything a home. And fourth, remember that a simple, consistent routine is always, always more powerful than a huge one-time effort. So let's end right where we started, with this idea. Hopefully by now, this statement feels a little less crazy and a lot more like a real possibility. Because when you have a logical system to follow, the whole process really can become straightforward, manageable, and yeah, maybe even easy.
And that's the real power of this whole thing. It doesn't just stop with your kitchen junk drawer. Think about it. Your messy desktop files, your work projects, even your fitness goals. What's one overwhelming part of your life that you could apply this practical logic to next? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.